So, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to the Munich Cybersecurity Conference digital edition. And we invited today for our Talking Heads session, Christopher Ahlberg from a company he co-founded in 2009 called Recorded Future, which by its name touches already upon an important subject that we will be discussing today about the future of cybersecurity and strategies in mitigating cyber risks. And Christopher is been involved with data analytics and an extension the sort of intelligence of threats and threat analytics for over 30 years. He has a PhD in computer science and was actually is a member of the Royal Swedish Academy. He's originally from Sweden, but now founded his company in Boston and in Massachusetts. And yeah, is Recorded Future, if you will look it up, has the philosophy not of a sort of a narrow I would what you can see many times, the very narrow focused IT security threat detection, but it is actually a much more global approach. They will use all kinds of data sources, actually as the internet itself, he will explain in a minute. And that makes the quality of the outcome and of the information they will be able to source much more relevant in our efforts to mitigate cyber risks. Recorded Future is also a first source for many intelligence agencies across the world, across the globe. So that's how we met, and so I'm very happy that you could find time today for us to give us some insights and a perspective on this subject. Welcome. Thank you for joining. You're meeting us now from Gothenburg in Sweden. That's fantastic, and so we are in the same time zone and makes it easier. Yeah, Christopher, do you want to add anything from your about yourself?
No,
I mean, I try to.
You're very generous, so thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, really? Thank you so much.
It's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And when we started discussing this talk, I thought maybe we could look at recent developments. I mean, you've been looking at this for many years, but do you see some different qualities or some different major trends or developments recently with regard to cyber threats? Is there something that you observe?
It's good. If you think about it, we just this very moment in time with sort of Russia, putting 100,000 troops on the border of Ukraine, which obviously hits at the heartland of Europe, if you want, and the sort of activities around it, where we've seen hacktivism against Belarusian trains and ransomware hitting German fuel production here. It's pretty interesting. So first of all, again, I've done this for a long time. So you try to sort of look back and figure out like what's the baseline. The baseline, I think, cyber criminals, and there's a whole lot of them. Many of them are in Russia, but they're also in China, they're in Brazil, they might be in Nigeria. Frankly, some of them are going to be in Germany and the US and Sweden probably too. Police has a tendency of arresting them a little bit faster there. So cyber criminals, they want to make money. Always remember that. Spies wants to steal secrets. That's sort of always remember that as your baseline. And even when you're a company, that informs you, because you think about, are spies looking to come after me? Are cyber criminals looking to come after me? And depending on what you do, that will inform you in some interesting ways. So just having that sort of baseline. Regardless if I'm a spy or I'm a criminal, I'm going to send boatloads of phishing emails. That's sort of interesting, sort of basic point of how they all sort of start this stuff. Ransomware, came up, I don't know, people will actually say that first ransomware was sort of launched 20, 30 years ago, but, over the last 5 years or so, it's been incredibly prevalent. And it's interesting because sort of like maybe there is some convergence between the criminals and maybe a little bit of nation state in that, continues to be a very profitable way of making money. I think it's interesting over, the recent times here. Obviously, the Biden administration in the US have put a higher emphasis on cyber, if you want, than I think any administration in the US have ever done. It may be that any administration has done anywhere. Maybe, we could talk about that, but so the quality of the people that have been put in and the ability of them to push an agenda around this has been pretty interesting. But even with all of that, I think it's also just to state from the beginning, we're very early in trying to do something about this threat here. Churchill-like point would be that we're only maybe at the end of the beginning sort of thing, there's a lot to fix here. Because we built an internet that is, frankly, is insecure and it connects everything. And when you have something that is insecure and it connects everything, it's not a good combination. And we'll come back and talk about that.
That's so coming back to
just basic things. I think, hacktivism being back. I think a couple of years, many of us, including ourselves, we wrote off hacktivism. Belarusian cyber partisans, as they call themselves, was able to shut down railroads transporting potentially Russian troops in Belarus. That's certainly very interesting. But I'll just wrap it up by saying that with this sort of what's going on in Ukraine, I think we're seeing something. If you want to say what's going on right now, this convergence between physical threats, disinformation, and cyber threats happening at a pace like this. That convergence we've talked about for years at Recorded Future, it's happening right in front of us. Whether this conflict actually turns kinetic, people shooting at each other, this will be the sort of the takeaway from that. And it's a future that we all have to get ready for.
Yeah, so this convergence you're mentioning, you meant the baseline that there's one motivation that could be the cyber criminals. They're looking practically for money, and maybe I remember a talk by a CISO from an important bank, and they said the attacks are happening where the money is, and that's are the banks. So they've been dealing with those kind of risks for a number of decades, and then you have those others who are after secrets and knowledge and trying to access those treasures. And now we have, Anne Neuberger, she's the cybersecurity White House director. She now traveled to Brussels to meet her colleagues from NATO because they think, as you say, there could be a sort of a prelude that happens through cyber activities to any kinetic activity. So
either prelude or as it unravels, and it's going to go fast. And we saw that with NotPetya, that probably was a somewhat targeted attack in Ukraine that went wrong and just boom, spread. And that's sort of why it's scary, not to be a scaremonger, but that is, I think, why we're all sort of thinking that we need to take that very seriously.
Coming to this observation, you have an insecure internet when everything connected to it. We all know the term of transition to digital technologies and the Internet of Things, the industrial Internet of Things, and everything is connected, as you say. So that is a basic flaw, because obviously the internet, as we know it, was not designed to be doing all that that it's doing now or it's used for. What is the solution then? Is it to accept it and just to understand those risks and kind of be prepared to work on the resilience part, that we are prepared, and if something happens we know what to do? Or do you see also some developments that this basic flaw, that the internet itself was not using secure protocols and all kinds of technologies would be also possible to fix?
No, it's very, very interesting. So I, you've heard me say this point before. The world have sort of the internet has sort of become a reflection of the world over the last 25 years. Money, systems, lots of things have slowly migrated onto the internet. During the next 25 years, this flips and the world becomes a reflection of the internet. So we're only at the start. Now, I do think that we should remember to be an optimist, but whether the internet started in 1971 or whatever we put the time pointer, for many of us, it really started sort of in the early 90s with web browsers and all that sort of stuff. Wherever you put the start, just think about the economic developments and the sort of the tremendous developments that happened in that time frame. With actually not just in economics but politics, and lots of really good things, a lot of bad things also. But there are people, hundreds of millions, maybe billions of people have come out of poverty during those timeframes. Enormous progress have done in the world, being made in the world, and I'm a fundamental optimist. And partially, the internet carries a lot of that sort of with it, the ability to connect trade and connect politics and connect lots of really good things. And you could argue that maybe a much heavier protocol, maybe a more sort of controlled internet would have been better. But frankly, it probably never would have been happened then. It would have been not to ding our dear French friends, but it would have been a dear sort of a French Minitel or something, and it would not have gone sort of as far. So now, are there things we could do fundamentally to the internet to make it better, more secure, and the devices we connect to it? Of course, there are. I'm not the network protocol designer expert, but there are things we can do. But the problem is that it's not just the network protocol. It's not the IP. We fix the IPv, go from IPv4 to IPv6, and it's better. There's a lot to untangle in this, and the insecurities is sort of. It's so many things that I like to always bring up, that a lot of the stuff that has now been bad in politics comes from the ability of the internet to be used as a micro-targeting engine that goes straight into our heads. And so that's sort of, it's not as insecurity in the protocol. That's just like what the internet has enabled. So if you want to unravel all of that, then you'd basically put us back in caves again. So you're not going to unravel it, but it's going to take a long time to fix. I think that's the conclusion.
Okay, so of course we have maybe, if I understand you correctly, also as you said, the world is reflected in the internet and the behavior and the way we use it. So it's also the awareness and the knowledge that we know what we are doing and how we are doing it. So that goes along, and you mentioned at the beginning, disinformation is also a phenomena that you can increasingly being instrumentalized for all kinds of purposes that we've been knowing also in the offline world, back with the radio and the movie propaganda. So it's not new to humankind. Still, we see this migration to sort of cloud services, that companies sort of or governments let providers take care of their data applications and services and systems, and of course we all know, although we have this nice background picture with the clouds, and the title of the conference is Drifting Clouds: Innovative Perspectives on Evolving Cyber Threats, but we know that the cloud in the end is a computational center. It is the data are going in submarine cables. So and Togo, the poor, with the volcano, and they got cut off, and then there's no internet and there's nothing, and despite all the clouds in the sky. So so do you think this is just a logical development that we rely on those specialized providers, and it doesn't really make a difference in terms of cybersecurity, or even it does because they are better prepared? And so what would be your view on this?
I think I would say, so first of all, you're right that it's sort of all of this have happened. I think companies writ large, organizations, governments, organizations have sort of, if you think about the risk they have and to your point, cloud risk or hosting risk, hardware risk and software risk. If you sort of add those three things up and you say, is there a single company, regardless if it's a German bank or an American manufacturing company or a Japanese, whatever, is there a single company on the planet who really have a good grip on that risk today? Probably not. And frankly, this is why we started Recorded Future. We wanted to help these companies get better intelligence, better information. But, I think there's this tremendous risk sitting in this. And so far, it's the bad guys who've been able to take advantage of this, because you're a hacker in mom's basement in Orenburg. You suddenly can scan the internet with super high speed and just find everything that is vulnerable. And then you sort of opportunistically go after what's vulnerable. You land on a German fuel, whatever sort of.
That's right. Yeah.
Company.
Whatever's open. Yes,
that.
exactly.
You probably didn't even know what company it was, but
that's right.
But I think, companies around the world have underinvested in cybersecurity. And they've and what's happened during the last 5 years here, if we sort of say that things have accelerated, is that a lot of classic sort of security hygiene went out of the window, because it's sort of like you let this risk migrate onto your cloud provider, into new kinds of software. You just, they'll sort it, but they won't. And it just means that companies have not invested enough in this. We've sort of, if this was the equivalent of security that, Mercedes might put into, cars, or, nuclear industry might put into whatever, where I think just companies have invested in this, or maybe not applied the money in a smart way. In some cases, it's the one case, in some cases the other, but it just needs to be taken more seriously. And we're in an early journey of that, and we'll nail it. We'll figure it out. It's going to be a combination of technical things. It's going to be a combination of actually getting to that guy in the basement of Orenburg. Eventually, we'll have to collaborate with the Russians on what it means to arrest that guy. We'll just have to figure that out, and we'll get to it. But it's going to be a long journey.
You mentioned, exactly the basement, and they launched their automated scanning systems, and then they detect vulnerabilities, and will launch, and malware will start its mission. On the defense side, I mean, especially now, also talking from your current activity, is there any hope or any counter technology? I mean, can we also make better use of evolving technologies, machine learning, I don't know, sort of automated analytical algorithms that help to detect anomalies or movements that are maybe susceptible of being not part of their normal behavior. I don't know. What is do you think there is we are on the verge, or we have already passed a certain milestone, and we can rely on such systems in combination, as you said, with other aspects and tools?
I would say first, the optimist in me will say yes, in terms of that we can. We're not there yet, but we can. That's one. But then there's a but that says that you're dealing with enormous complexity, and anybody who thinks that one solution to enormous complexity, this has never happened. It doesn't matter if it's computers or something else. High complexity, you're never going to have the sort of the bulletproof sort of approach to solving. Anybody who claims that is being stupid, and we're trying to avoid to be stupid. Now, on the other hand, I do think I like this comment that what's his name, Rob Joyce, who runs now cybersecurity for the NSA, the cyber defense side of things, and he gave the speech at, I think it was the Usenix conference 4-5 years ago, when he was in a prior role that was a little bit slightly more offensive in nature, and he said, look, basic lesson for any defender of networks is you need to know your network better than the bad guy. And again, the problem becomes when the guy in the basement, probably a guy, not always, but in the basement in Orenburg, when he can quickly know the network better than the defender at company X, whether it's in Germany or Nigeria or the US, that becomes a problem. And we also know we have high turnover IT staff and so on. So the guy knows the network better. Now, but the good news here is that there is data, and we worked hard at this to sort of help people organize that data, so you can, and once you have data, now I think what you're saying makes sense, because now I can, whether it's sort of looking for anomalies in the sort of just basics, there's an open port here. Basically, I left the door open. I should know that. It's just not, it doesn't take AI or machine learning or
right.
Data tells me, so let's do something about that. all the way over to where, you know, you to your point, use more advanced methods, and whether it's from the statistics book or the AI book, I don't really care. But yes, we're going to be able to use more advanced analytical methods to bring together data and make life miserable for the guy, make it really hard, make it, you know, more resilient, but also at the same time, you know, make it so that that guy have to go elsewhere and eventually will trip up and get arrested. And if we do this sort of as a combination, resiliency, shutting down doors, just making it sort of had less open doors to go after, make it so that we can deter in, you know, our world, so that we can sort of make him go elsewhere, and then also combining that with the some other aspects of, and which will probably be more countries doing, of making it more logical so we get him arrested. We're going to make, you know, we'll make strides, we'll make progress.
Wonderful. Actually, you got us already some practical advice, know your network, and you know, as number one point in order to be able to defend it.
I stole the point, but it's a
yeah,
great point.
that's an important point. Or maybe not have everything connected that maybe doesn't need to be connected, or isolated networks. You know, there's cyber hygiene basics, but again. And also, as you said, be prepared, and in case you have some incident, and be able to react and know what to do practically,
and know what's going on around you. I think you know what's going on right now in Ukraine informs us that we, as whether, and this goes all the way to CEOs of companies, that, you know, what's going on in Ukraine. You need to, as a CEO, I'm not talking about the IT guy here, but the CEO of any company that does business beyond their village, basically, need to ask questions to their IT staff and their security staff and say, what's the implication? Do we have suppliers that touch Ukraine? You know, I really ask pretty basic questions, and don't be intimidated, and don't let the IT guy intimidate you with lots of sort of marble garble sort of stuff, but just basic questions. Are we, you know, will Ukraine impact us? And if they just say, nah, they won't, then okay, too simple. Tell me again, tell me why it won't. And really sort of by basic question answering, any CEO of worth their, you know, whatever, should be able to do that. And I think that's maybe part of it, that take this seriously.
Great. Is there, I mean, our audience is mainly consisting also of, you know, board members and people, management, it doesn't matter in the public or in the private domain, responsible for their organizations and the decisions, and also the risk management. In the end, it's risk management, I understand. So your advice would be to really look at the developments and to be aware, but also, you know, we hear about the supply chain, you know, the ecosystems, that you have suppliers, you have customers, you're in the middle of those connections, business connections. Is there a point that you want to make also in that respect?
I think the point again is that the vocabulary ends up being so disconnected between the CEOs and the boards of a, you know, if you have a significant company, a large German insurance company, whatever, I'm just making this up, and you know, the CEO and the board or the CFO, you know, they'll understand risk for sure. They might, you know, any insurance company is going to understand risk as well as anybody. But then and they'll have a risk register. I don't know what that's called in German, but they'll have the 50 lines, and then do we have cyber risk will be one line item, and if you're lucky, there'll be two. But then, you know, and they'll maybe ask the IT manager, look, there seems to be a lot of stuff going on in Ukraine. Tell me more. And then the IT manager, the CISO, whatever you want to call it, shows up with, you know, like he'll show, like, you know, just like get into these details, and then the CEO or the CFO just drifts. This got boring, and sounds like either he has it under control and okay, great. But I think there is something in connecting business and being able to inform the business. So that's the responsibility of the IT and the security teams, to be able to inform the business in a way that is meaningful. And likewise, it's up to, and this is maybe more important, it's up to the CEO of that insurance company to be able to ask meaningful questions back and don't let people get into all the, you know, IT stuff, but you know, keep it at level where actually that discussion can meet, and that you then actually have a sense of understanding that yes, we do actually have risk in Poland, where we have subsidiaries that are connected back to our home office and that have suppliers in Ukraine, and the network connectivity is such that we could be at risk. And okay, if something happens, what do we do about it? Do we have the ability to cut that wire? Do we have backups? They could quickly go down the rabbit hole, but you can also keep it at a way where actually I think CEOs could have great impact on that, but seldomly do that.
Christopher Ahlberg, thank you so much for your time and your insights on this evolving cyber threat picture. It's been a pleasure and a privilege talking to you. And I hope to meet you soon also in person once we are able to do this again as a plenary conference, and to hear more about the experience you have, and also, you know, the strategies and the best practice, to call it a way, that show you know, some success. You mentioned law enforcement. Of course, the guy in the basement and wherever he is should not feel sort of untouchable. He should be also
Yes.
you know, and in a way, maybe you mentioned another important, the complexity. Those things are complex, but they should also get more complex for those attackers. So to be more difficult and more require more
complexity
effort.
and law enforcement complexity, and we'll be able to go at it. So that's good.
That's
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Christopher. It's been a pleasure, and I'll see you soon. And for the moment, a wonderful day, and goodbye.
Thank you so much.